Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the IoT For All Podcast, the number one publication and resource for the Internet of Things. I'm your host, Ryan Chacon. If you're watching this on YouTube, we would truly appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. If you're listening to us on a podcast directory like Apple Podcasts, please subscribe to get the latest episodes as soon as they are out, and it helps other people find the content. All right, on today's episode, we have Steve Clark, Security Technologist at WISeKey. They are a global cybersecurity company currently deploying large-scale digital identity ecosystems for people and objects using blockchain, AI, and IoT. So we're going to talk about security for a bit here, about the landscape, top considerations for IoT security in general, how to think about security when it comes to IoT solutions, how to identify, what identity is at the basis of security. What does it really mean? What use cases are out there? Challenges they're seeing in the space, and just general advice for how to better prepare when it comes to deploying IoT solutions. All in all, fantastic episode. I think we'll get a lot of value out of it. But before we get into it, any of you out there are looking to enter the fast-growing and profitable IoT market, but don't know where to start? Check out our sponsor, Leverage. Leverage's IoT solutions development platform provides everything you need to create turnkey IoT products that you can white label and resell under your own brand. To learn more, go to iotchangeseverything.com. That's iotchangeseverything.com. And without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the IoT For All Podcast. Welcome, Steve, to the IoT For All Podcast. Thanks for being here this week.
Well, it's good to be here, Ryan. Thanks.
Absolutely. Let's kick this off by having you give a quick introduction about yourself to our audience, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, yeah. I've been working with security and secure semiconductors for approximately 15 years. And over that time, I've been able to influence the design of semiconductors and look at the architectures in the IoT industry in general. I'm currently working as a security technologist for WISeKey, and over the years, I've been involved in the industry security standards organization, National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, to look at IoT onboarding security in general, and basically what that project will result in is kind of guidelines for the for IoT onboarding and IoT security in general. So that's a little background on me. Thanks.
Fantastic. So for the company that you're with now, WISeKey, what is it that the company focuses on? Tell us a little bit more about the organization, the role in IoT, that kind of thing.
Sure. Actually, WISeKey Semiconductors has been around for about 25 years. It hasn't always been WISeKey Semiconductors. We've had acquisitions over the years that have changed our names. We started as Atmel, and WISeKey Semiconductors basically make secure elements that provide the secure identities for IoT devices. And we also make those semiconductors to provide, we make a secure MCU. We have smart card capabilities as well. And they're all centered around security and trustworthiness of the devices themselves. So, in addition to that, we have, with WISeKey, we actually have a certificate authority and a PKI infrastructure certificate management system that is that pairs very nicely with our secure semiconductors, and we've been we basically cover the root of trust of the platform of the IoT device, as well as the infrastructure PKI root of trust and certificate authorities. So that's
fantastic.
A little bit about. We're based in Geneva, Switzerland, and we're kind of an international company. So.
Awesome. Well, yeah, appreciate the overview. That's good context for our audience. So given that you have a decent amount of experience over like the course of your career in the security space, tell us about kind of how the security landscape potentially, or I guess not potentially, how the security landscape has kind of evolved through kind of your eyes over the years as it relates to IoT, like where it kind of has been earlier in your career and kind of how it's evolved into where it is now, and just kind of the overall kind of state that we're in now with security.
Yeah. So early in IoT, there was a white paper, I think a Cisco white paper, that said something like 20 billion devices by the year 2020. So everyone got all excited. And basically what you would get an impression that would be a uniform kind of a IoT is a uniform thing. But actually what it's played out like is IoT is fragmented, and there are very many different aspects of IoT that would be that have come into play, and so there's been a kind of a silos of organizations and protocols and things like that, and over the years, people have attacked the problem of security in a myriad of different ways, and what I see happening now, especially with this this National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence project, is that there's a consolidation of okay, what kinds of architectures are going to be secure, and what kinds of protocols are going to be supported. And there have been a lot of false starts in both of those areas that I think will be consolidated into a more uniform kind of a security landscape.
Yeah, it's been an interesting space to kind of follow and track. I've had a number of experts come on and talk about kind of not only the focus of their own organization, but kind of things they've seen as important when it comes to IoT security. So that kind of brings up another question that I think would be good to get your thoughts on is when it comes to IoT security, what are the top considerations that organizations should be thinking about, whether they're on the implementation side of the security or they're a company adopting a solution that obviously needs a security element to it? What should people really be thinking about when it comes to kind of the foundation of a solid IoT security solution?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Ryan. I think foundationally, the identity of the IoT device is really at the core of it. If you think of it in terms of human identity or people identity, we have birth certificates, and based on an assurance of our identity, you can do things like open bank accounts. You can get passports. You can have various bank loans and those sorts of things. So once you've established the identity, you next ask the question of, okay, what are you authorized to do, or what do I want to give you permissions to do? Mm-hmm. So I think that for both of those circumstances, excuse me, for IoT identity, it's no different. And in IoT, there is a similar kind of a birth credential that you would be assigning to each IoT device. And it is similar because it has a information about, just like a birth certificate for a human, it has a information about the device itself, where it was manufactured, similar to parents, and it is certified by a trusted authority, just like a birth certificate would be certified by a government organization. And if you wanted to check on that birth certificate, you can go back to that authority and say, okay, this is the identity of the device that I think I'm dealing with. And then you can ask the question for all of the other security, which is how do I communicate securely with it? How do I update its firmware securely?
Right.
What kinds of firmware does it need? Is it going to have a secure boot? Is it so I can ask all of those additional questions once I understand the identity, and that is the foundation, and it has applications in many different IoT use cases.
So yeah, can you elaborate a little bit more on when you talk about and mention identity as the basis for security? What does that exactly mean for somebody who maybe is not very familiar with security and just understanding the importance there?
Yeah. So imagine a Imagine a attack that is based on impersonation.
Okay.
So you've got a device that is pretending to be some other kind, some device that is trusted,
Mm-hmm.
and that identity, with that identity, whatever permissions and authorities that were granted to that other device are now yours
Right.
to exploit.
Mm.
And the better the way to protect that identity, just to get back to the secure semiconductors, the way to protect that identity is with some kind of hardware security that is tamper proof.
Okay.
And with secure semiconductors, secure elements, that is a possible way. That is one way to protect them. There are others with trust zones and puffs and those kinds of things, but the the secure identity of a secure element becomes the identity of that IoT device, and you can wrap a certificate around that, and as I was describing earlier, um, get a certificate authority to verify that in a third party independent kind of a way.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. That helps a ton. I think it's very fascinating, kind of interesting stuff to just understand the not just the value, but kind of just the whole scope of what needs to be done, why it's so important, kind of what it
Mm-hmm.
helps protect against. And I think it's something that is often overlooked by a lot of organizations, unfortunately, is when they should be thinking about security and how early they should be implementing it. I don't think it's ever too early to kind of be thinking about that. It sounds like from most discussions I've had in our conversation here.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, coming back to your earlier question about what the IoTs looked like in the early days,
Yeah.
people weren't thinking about security. It was
No.
it
No.
was a free for all, and the need for security was recognized, but the implementation of it was lacking in many cases.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we've come a long way. It feels like from my even I've only been in the space for a number of years, and it seems like we've come pretty far distance on the security front and just understanding security when it comes to IoT and the vulnerabilities and how to protect against it.
Right.
Um, Let me ask you this: in the kind of current landscape that we're in now, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen on the security front for organizations as they deploy and scale different IoT solutions? Is there any kind of maybe commonalities across use cases or verticals that you've seen consistent kind of challenges, and if so, like how are companies overcoming them?
Yeah, I think one of them would be the counterfeiting, uh, the anti-counterfeiting of the IoT devices, and the ability to impersonate
Hmm.
IoT devices. And again, the secure elements are a good protection against that. As far as other deployment, uh, there is there are still many different protocols to choose from and many different approaches to IoT security. And I think choosing what solution is best for your use case is it may be one of uh, the major issues here. And we work with companies that are manufacturers, and so they use our chips in their end products,
Right.
and choosing the right security approach and the that fits into your overall infrastructure and your corporate strategies. I think those are some major questions to answer. And like I said before, the consolidation of the industry is ongoing, and
Yeah.
which security protocols and approaches and architectures are appropriate is a big question.
Definitely. Yeah, I know. And this is not just on the manufacturing side, as kind of to your comment a second ago, but across a lot of different industries, the level of security that they consider important or necessary for their solution depends a lot of times on cost and is sometimes viewed as maybe
Yeah.
their use case is low risk, right? Like, oh, why
Yeah.
would somebody ever hack us? Why would this, So
Yeah.
how do you handle those kind of barriers in conversations with companies or in just general kind of daily conversations? How do you advise maybe those companies, or how do you kind of handle when they bring up like, we don't want to spend a lot on cost because of our budget, and we don't really think our solution is something that people is very vulnerable, or it's lower risk, I guess.
Yeah. So basically, what you would what I would do is look at their use case and try to identify the the threats uh, that would be coming up against their products and services. And I mean, there are situations where the secure element is absolutely needed, but in other
Mhm.
circumstances, that level of security may not be needed, depending on their use case and what they're trying to protect. So I think a thorough analysis of the architectures and the use case um, would be where I would start. And as you get, and I think that in many circumstances, the customer that's asking that question wouldn't necessarily see the things the same way that I would see them,
Sure.
based on the threat models and the attack vectors that are available to the adversaries. And so, depending on what they're trying to protect, and depending on various other things, the um, whether or not they need a secure element is sometimes is up for debate. But in other scenarios, like secure smart cities, like smart street lights
Hmm.
and city facilities that would use, say, a Wise Sun Alliance kind of a IoT device. Those kinds of devices absolutely are very there. You stop and think about it for a second, and you've got an IoT device that's sitting on a public place somewhere
Right.
that's accessible to adversaries, that has an identity. How do you protect that identity? How do you um, get the impersonate? I mean, if someone was going to attack it, they would get the identity out of it and then impersonate it in a adversarial way. So, boy, wow, that really does need a secure element in those kinds of applications. Smart metering
Right.
and smart cities. Those are all applications that you absolutely need a secure, immutable identity. So,
Absolutely. Um, so before we wrap up here, I want to ask you one last kind of general thing that I think our audience would find a ton of value out of. How for those listening who are starting kind of on their IoT journey, or you may be kind of in the pilot stage early on, basically, is what I'm getting at. What advice would you have for those organizations when it comes to the security piece of their solution? How should they be thinking about it? What advice on how to kind of go about getting started, ensuring they have the right information to engage with a security organization or a security company? Just generally speaking, what advice would you have for them to make sure they kind of do it the right way?
yeah, so what we have done in the past is we have security assessment reports, and we've done those for several companies that helps them to align themselves with the actual threats and the threat model and the attack vectors and all those kinds of things. Um, so getting an evaluation from a someone who has experience in the industry would be, I think, a
Right.
good first step.
Okay. Fantastic. And is there anything that they need to be thinking about or maybe come prepared with as from their side, or is it more just as long as they understand kind of what they're trying to do and accomplish, then the company they reach out to and engage with will be able to ask the right questions and bring the necessary information to the table to help?
Yeah, I think what you would try to put your requirements not so much in what you believe to be the end result, but more at a higher level
Okay.
of looking at your requirements from a what are you trying to accomplish,
Sure.
and what objectives does this project have,
Mm,
and then we can because a lot of times what people will do is they will get an idea in their head and say, okay, we need this piece of security, when
right.
they really don't. What they really need is to reach back and look at what their objectives are in the
Okay.
project, and then it may turn out that they do need what they believe they needed, but it may turn out that it would be a variation on that, or some
Hmm.
other thing. So I think
Oh,
looking at your overall objectives is a good starting
absolutely.
place.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Steve. This has been really good conversation. I appreciate you kind of taking time to do this. I wanted to have at the end of this, you just kind of share with our audience where they may be able to reach out, follow up with questions, learn more if they're interested. What's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so WISeKey has a website, and it's www.wisekey.com. I think that would be a good place to start. We also have a LinkedIn and Twitter feeds that you can follow, and I look forward to working with people going forward. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for taking the time. Look forward to getting this out to our audience, and love to find a way to continue to do more content on the security front. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
Okay, well, thank you, Ryan. Have a great day.
You too. All right, everyone. Thanks again for watching that episode of the IoT For All podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please click the thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to hit the bell notification so you get the latest episodes as soon as they become available. Other than that, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.